Now, I'm no conspiracy theorist, right? But does anyone find it weird that the weekend that this whole email shenanigans goes on in Mercedes, Lewis gets a podium and outqualifies Russell? Again, it was close, but he magically gained 3 tenths. And this is what I say when I mean Lewis Hamilton fans are kind of delusional. And this is what I mean when I say Lewis Hamilton fans are mostly delusional, but that one part of delusion based in reality might actually have a point. For those of you who are kind of unaware, I'm sure this is pretty mainstream news. For the past 2 years, Lewis has been experimenting with the car. Ever since 2022, he's been experimenting with the car, which has led the whole trope in any Mercedes comment section whenever Mercedes have a decent FP1, 2, or 3 to say, don't touch the car. It's a whole meme within the Mercedes community. Basically, the fans say, don't touch the car, as in don't experiment. It's fine the way it is. But eventually, on Saturday or Sunday, they do some sort of experimentation. Lewis has a bad race, drives a recovery, and then rinse repeat for next week. Now, the difference is that this year, George is comprehensively beating Lewis in qualifying. Very comprehensively. It's not by much in terms of tenths, like it's maybe a tenth here or a tenth there. Even when Lewis beat him this weekend, it was 100th or a couple hundredths of a second maybe. But over the score sheet, I think he's like 7-2 up. But the joke, don't touch the car, has now become don't touch Lewis's car after Lewis Hamilton started insinuating after he announced his Ferrari move that the reason, or at least one of the reasons, was because the team wanted him out. This was then further amplified by the fact that he then, after in the Monaco Grand Prix, suggested that he would not outqualify George for the rest of the year and alluded to foul play. He then almost doubled down on this in future Grand Prix, and whenever something would go wrong, Lewis Hamilton would say, for some reason, the car just was different. I'm driving the exact same, the car is just different. And this meant that Lewis Hamilton's fan base and many people have speculated that Mercedes are sabotaging Lewis Hamilton, which wouldn't make much sense because Lewis's future is outside the team, sure, but Lewis's stock is so high as a driver, commercially and talent-wise, he could score 0 points for the end of the year, till the end of the year, and still sign for Ferrari. Like, there would be no blinks. He is just that good. And so it's in Mercedes' best interest to milk every bit of Lewis Hamilton magic out of him whilst he is in the team. I think there is not necessarily some foul play going on, but the team is definitely gearing towards George. When George puts in some input, they're definitely going in that direction. Things that will help his driving style, make him go a bit faster. They're planning upgrades based on what George wants, and setup changes essentially would favor a driving style. Well, the car would favor a driving style similar to George. Couple this with the fact that he's going to get upgrades sooner means that, yeah, he probably is going to have the upper hand if we're talking about having an equal car and an equal playing field as your teammate. George Russell will most likely have the upper hand. But that doesn't mean Lewis Hamilton is being sabotaged. Being sabotaged is forgetting to warm up your tire blankets, and so you have cold tires. Being sabotaged is what Valtteri Bottas was in Sakir 2020. That was sabotage. When Mercedes decided to not put him on the correct set of tires, allow his brakes to catch fire, and then send him out, only for him to get overtaken by Russell in what I think the most overhyped overtake of the year. But back to the story, I guess all of this came to a head when a mysterious email similar to that exposed Christian Horner came out to many officials. In fact, many people, I'm pretty sure it was the exact same list of people that was sent to in the Christian Horner incident, was sent to essentially elaborating how Lewis Hamilton was being sabotaged. Now, Mercedes, unlike Red Bull, actually addressed this email and spoke out, or Toto Wolff spoke out, saying that he is, launching a police investigation. He's reported this to the authorities because they do not play with this. This is essentially defamation. Now, when I first saw this, my first reaction was it Lewis anonymously? And then I thought, no, that would be absurd. Then I thought it probably was someone from Team LH. But then it was reported that it was someone that had actual credibility. So it couldn't have just been a random fan. So who it was, maybe we will know in the future. And we don't know what it says, but we know what it did. Because magically, after this email was sent, Lewis Hamilton strangely acted like he never gave any insinuation of sabotage. He acted like, I don't know where all this negativity is coming from. It came from you. The negativity came from you, Lewis. Lewis, you for weeks stoked up your fan base. And I say, his fan base, because it's one thing to say something to the press, but we all know what Lewis meant. We all know what Lewis was going to insinuate when he made those comments about not being able to beat George, about how his tires were mysteriously not up to temperature, how the car feels very different just when he gets into the qualifying. It all screams that he wanted to send subliminals to his crazy fan base, but didn't want to take any of the blame for it. So he acted like he is all positivity, which I'm sure, Lewis is mostly positivity. He acted super positive. Oh, I don't want any hate. I'm anti-hate. #blessed. When he was the one that started all of this. If Lewis Hamilton never insinuated that he is being sabotaged, he would have never got this type of press or publicity, and I guarantee you this email wouldn't have been sent out. You know what? If Lewis Hamilton would have kept saying he's just experimenting with the car, none of this would have came out. The fact that Lewis is the one that instigated this and then acted so surprised and called for nothing to happen or for everyone to calm down when it got escalated because of what he said, kind of wraps my brain a bit. But whatever was said in that email, whoever said that email, whatever Lewis said, meant that this time in qualifying, for the first time in who knows how many races, Lewis Hamilton actually beat George Russell in qualifying. And although George jumped him in the race at the start, for most of the race, Lewis and George were joined by the hip, and Lewis on many occasions looked at overtaking Russell and then managed to get it done. And he did finish in third place ahead of George Russell, again, for the first time in a long time, or in a while at least. And so I've got to say, if I was personally a paranoid Lewis Hamilton fan, I'm not saying I am. All I'm saying is that this would be further confirmation that whatever Mercedes did, or whatever was going on behind the scenes, was correct, or at least wasn't completely wrong. Because it is a crazy coincidence that the first race that all of this really blows up is the first race Lewis Hamilton gets a podium, is the first race Lewis Hamilton out-qualifies and out-races George. It's the first race for all these things in a very long time. And so I'm not saying there was any validity to this, but there must be somewhere along the line. Something definitely was up this weekend. And I'm sure Mercedes, when they were thinking on the pit wall, who should we give the hard tyres to? I'm sure one of the strategists suggested Lewis, and Toto gave a very small side eye, thinking about all of the headlines that would have come out if Lewis came out on an unfavourable tyre, got overtaken by Charles, and finished fifth. And so what did they do? They put George on the hards, Lewis on the softs, Lewis to finish third, and everyone went home happy. And when I say everyone went home happy, I mean Mercedes fans went home happy. Because when I say Mercedes fans are not happy with George Russell doing well, I dearly mean it. Here are some comments from Mercedes Instagram when they got their first real podium of the year. You would think that they had a double DNF. It was absolute insanity. When I say the Mercedes fan base is 80% Lewis Hamilton fans, and so that they don't actually enjoy any result that George does well, I really do mean it. I don't know what other way to say it. I really do mean it. Mercedes have not only the most toxic fan base in Formula One, but they have the most confusing fan base, because on the one hand, they always talk about fix the car. But when the car is being fixed or when the car is competitive, it only matters when Lewis is winning. So I think what they really mean is make the car perfect for Lewis to drive whilst also sabotaging Russell so that Russell can't win, because if Lewis loses, it's because of the race directors. If he loses, it's because he was experimenting. And now if he loses, it's because he's being sabotaged. Part of the Team LH cult is Lewis cannot lose. No matter what, if Lewis takes an L, it wasn't because of talent. It wasn't because the other driver did well. It is because something nefarious out of Lewis's control happened, in which the system is rigged and F1 is trying to get him because he is a black man in a white man's world. And scene.